What happened between Rafe and Sarah in Outer Banks Season 5? Warning, major spoilers. Rafe and Sarah's relationship reaches its most emotional point in Outer Banks Season 5. After years of betrayal, violence, and resentment, the siblings finally begin to understand each other. But Rafe's past catches up with him, forcing him to leave the Outer Banks. Before he goes, he has an emotional goodbye with Sarah and apologizes for everything he has done. So, what actually happens between Rafe and Sarah in Season 5? For most of Outer Banks, Rafe Cameron and Sarah Cameron have had one of the most complicated sibling relationships in the entire series. They grew up in the same wealthy Cameron family, but they experienced that family very differently. Sarah eventually rejected the Cameron lifestyle and chose John B. and the Pogues. Rafe, meanwhile, became increasingly obsessed with his father's approval and spiraled into increasingly dangerous behavior. Their relationship became so toxic that Rafe even tried to kill Sarah in earlier seasons. So, when Season 5 begins, there's a huge amount of history between them. But something changes during the final season. For the first time, Rafe and Sarah begin to see each other as siblings rather than enemies. Why are Rafe and Sarah so estranged? The biggest source of their conflict has always been their family. Rafe blames Sarah for many of the problems that destroyed the Cameron family. He particularly resents her relationship with John B. and the Pogues. Sarah, meanwhile, sees Rafe as someone who repeatedly hurt her and their family. Their father, Ward, also played a major role in keeping the siblings divided. Ward constantly manipulated his children and encouraged them to compete for his approval. Rafe became obsessed with proving himself to his father. Sarah eventually realized that she couldn't keep living that way. That difference pushed the siblings further apart. Does Rafe still hate Sarah? At the beginning of Season 5, there is still plenty of resentment. Rafe hasn't suddenly become a completely different person. He still carries anger toward Sarah. But after JJ's death and the search for the Blue Crown, the circumstances force Rafe and Sarah to spend more time around each other. And gradually, something changes. Rafe starts recognizing that Sarah isn't responsible for everything that happened to their family. Sarah also begins to recognize that Rafe is not simply a monster. He's someone who is deeply damaged by their family and by his obsession with their father's approval. That doesn't excuse what Rafe did, but it helps Sarah understand him. What happens when they work together? Their relationship starts improving when they are forced to cooperate during the search for the Blue Crown. This isn't the first time they've worked together, but Season 5 makes their partnership much more meaningful. Rafe has information and connections the Pogues need. Sarah knows that despite everything, Rafe is still her brother. And as the danger increases, they begin trusting each other. That eventually leads to one of the most important emotional developments in their relationship. Sarah starts believing that Rafe might actually have her back. For Rafe, that matters enormously. He has spent years believing that his family abandoned him. Sarah is one of the few people who can actually challenge that belief. Does Sarah forgive Rafe? Not completely, and that's important. The show doesn't pretend that everything Rafe did can simply be forgotten. He attacked Sarah, he endangered her, he caused enormous damage to the Cameron family. Sarah knows all of that. But forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean pretending those things never happened. Instead, Season 5 gives them something more realistic: acceptance. Sarah begins accepting that Rafe is still her brother, and Rafe begins accepting that Sarah isn't the enemy he has spent years imagining her to be. That distinction makes their final scenes much more powerful. What happens after Rafe's past catches up with him? Rafe's biggest problem in the finale isn't Sarah, it's his past. His role in the death of Sheriff Peterkin eventually catches up with him. Rafe knows that if he remains in the Outer Banks, he could face serious consequences. So he decides to leave. He escapes with Sophia, his girlfriend, and prepares to start a new life away from Kildare. But before he leaves, he needs to say goodbye to Sarah. And that's where the sibling relationship finally reaches its emotional payoff. What does Rafe say to Sarah? Their goodbye is incredibly emotional. Rafe apologizes to Sarah. He tells her that he's sorry for everything that happened between them. This is significant because Rafe has rarely been willing to take responsibility for his actions. For much of the series, he has blamed other people. He blamed Sarah, he blamed John B., he blamed the Pogues, he blamed circumstances. But here, Rafe finally looks directly at his sister and acknowledges the damage he's caused. And Sarah doesn't respond with anger. Instead, the two siblings embrace. They both become emotional. It's one of the rare moments in the entire series where Rafe and Sarah genuinely connect. Netflix describes their goodbye as the most tearful of the finale, with Rafe thanking Sarah and apologizing before leaving. Why does Rafe say he won't see the baby? This is where Sarah's pregnancy becomes part of their goodbye. Sarah is pregnant with John B.'s child. Rafe realizes that if he leaves Kildare, he probably won't be coming back anytime soon. So he tells Sarah that he doesn't think he'll be able to return. That means he probably won't get to meet her baby. It's heartbreaking because, despite everything that happened between them, Sarah is still his sister. And this could be the last time they see each other. Drew Starkey, who plays Rafe, later explained that filming the scene with Madeline Klein felt like saying goodbye to a real sister after 7 years of working together. That emotion is visible in the scene. It doesn't feel like Rafe is simply saying goodbye to Sarah's character. It feels like he's saying goodbye to his entire family. Does Sarah want Rafe to stay? Sarah clearly doesn't want to lose her brother again, but she understands why he has to leave. Rafe's past has finally caught up with him. If he stays, he risks being arrested, and Sarah knows that forcing him to remain could make everything worse. So instead of trying to stop him, she accepts the decision. That's another sign of how much their relationship has changed. Earlier, Sarah might have seen Rafe only as a threat. Now she's capable of feeling sympathy for him. Does Rafe ever meet Sarah's baby? No. What happens to Rafe after leaving? Rafe leaves the Outer Banks with Sophia. The finale doesn't give us a detailed account of exactly where they settle, but the important point is that Rafe is finally getting away from the environment that contributed to so much of his destructive behavior. He has a chance to start again. Whether he can actually change is another question, but at least he's no longer trapped inside the Cameron family drama, and that's significant for his character. For the first time, Rafe has to live without his father controlling his decisions. Why is the goodbye so important? Rafe and Sarah's goodbye is essentially the conclusion of their entire sibling arc. At the beginning of the series, Rafe sees Sarah as someone who has betrayed their family. Sarah sees Rafe as dangerous. Their relationship deteriorates into violence. But over 5 seasons, both characters lose almost everything. Their father dies, their family falls apart, their wealth becomes meaningless, and eventually the siblings realize that they may be all they have left. That doesn't erase the past, but it gives them a reason to stop fighting. What does Rafe's apology mean? Rafe's apology is important because it shows genuine self-awareness. He doesn't ask Sarah to forget what happened. He simply tells her he's sorry. That may be the closest thing to redemption Rafe gets. The show doesn't magically turn him into a hero. Instead, it gives him one moment where he recognizes the damage he caused. And Sarah accepting that apology gives both characters closure. Final answer. So, what happened between Rafe and Sarah in Outer Banks Season 5? Their relationship finally moves from hatred and resentment toward understanding and forgiveness. At the beginning, there's still plenty of tension between them because of everything Rafe has done to Sarah and the rest of the family. But as they become involved in the search for the Blue Crown, they are forced to work together. That experience slowly changes their relationship. Sarah begins to see that Rafe isn't simply the villain she thought he was. He's also someone damaged by their dysfunctional family. Rafe, meanwhile, finally begins to understand that Sarah isn't responsible for everything that happened to the Camerons. By the finale, Rafe's past catches up with him. His involvement in Sheriff Peterkin's death means he has to flee Kildare with Sophia. Before leaving, he finds Sarah and gives her a heartfelt apology. He tells her he's sorry for everything that happened. Sarah accepts the apology, and the two siblings embrace.
It's a huge moment because their relationship has been defined by violence and resentment for most of the series. Rafe also tells Sarah that he doesn't think he'll be able to return to the Outer Banks, meaning he probably won't get to meet her baby. And that makes their goodbye even more emotional. Rafe leaves behind the Cameron family, his sister, and the life he once fought so desperately to control. Sarah, meanwhile, moves forward with John B. and their son. The important thing is that Rafe and Sarah don't end the series as enemies. They end it as brother and sister who finally understand how much they mean to each other. Rafe doesn't get a perfect redemption. Sarah doesn't forget his past. But they finally stop fighting. And after everything they've been through, that's probably the best ending their relationship could have received. Rafe leaves the Outer Banks. Sarah stays. But for the first time, they say goodbye with love instead.